here would say that they're budding entrepreneurs? By raise of hand. How many would say how many of you are running businesses right now? By raise of hand. What kind of businesses are being run in the room?
Oh, I have a mobile car detailing business.
Very cool. Very cool. That's great. How long have you been doing that?
A couple of years.
Fantastic. How's it going?
Going really good.
Good. Good for you. Congratulations. Anybody else? What are you up to? I'd love to hear. And anybody that's got an idea in process that they think is a good business idea. Oh, I know I'm really asking you to put yourself out there in doing that. Please.
We're making an affinity rewards program for the alumni and universities.
Very cool. How does that work?
Basically, we're utilizing the group buying power of alumni across the nation to bring them large-scale savings that they wouldn't be able to get otherwise.
Very nice. Very nice. I love the economies of scale that would come through that. Sounds great. Sounds like a great business. Amazing the opportunities that are out there. Amazing the things you have been or will be exposed to here at the Marriott School. I appreciate the chance to talk to you a little bit about ourselves. At the prodding of our team, as we've made changes this year, we've now called ourselves Clarke Capital. We've been with Yellowstone Partners for the last year. And let me tell you a little bit about how we got there and a little bit about our story. I can operate this. How many of you heard of Clearlink? How many, by raise of hands, have heard of Clearlink? You might now be hearing about Clearlink because Clearlink is now entering into Utah Valley, setting up an operation and planning to hire about 250 employees. So there's my plug for Clearlink. I'm no longer associated with them, but I want to tell you a little bit about how Clearlink started. As we've just exited in the last 12 or so months. But Clearlink was a business that was not supposed to succeed by almost every definition. Clearlink was started about 6 weeks after 9/11. The name came from my appreciation to my now good bride right here, who was at that time my fiance, who had enough gumption to believe in a failed entrepreneur. I had just come out of my first business. As many of you might have been involved in the summer sales cycle out there knocking doors, selling things door to door. I was part of one of those businesses. I early on worked for a guy named Todd Peterson, who many of you probably know. In his first failure as a business as well, it was called, in those days, Creative Marketing Concepts. It's gone to Apex and Vivint and a lot of other names in the process. But that's where my training came from. We started a company called iSatellite. iSatellite, 3 years into it, I figured was not a great business model for me. I had 4 business partners. Well, there were 4 business partners total. I mean, one of those. We all had the same skill set. We were all salespeople. No accountants, no marketers, all salespeople, guys who knew how to knock doors. We figured we were creating our own best competition every year, sending out guys to learn how to run this business. There weren't inherent barriers for them to keep them out, and we created a great network of competitors. So in our 3rd year, I decided to go out on my own. What I didn't know was it was going to be the worst economic environment in recent decades. So this was 6 weeks after 9/11. If you remember, at that time, nobody believed in the internet anymore. The capital markets were completely dry. 2 airplanes had hit buildings in New York. Everybody had cleared out of Wall Street. So to say that the capital markets weren't terribly favorable is probably an understatement for us. So how do you start a business in an environment like that? What we did, and I'm sorry, I've gone on to my punchline with Clearlink. I'm not very good at clearly this. There we go. So we entered the business. We started in my fiance's basement. Luckily, she had a fantastic job, and she was, at that time, the #1 seller of OxyContin. Legally, I have to say legally. It was a great drug to be selling in those days, and she did a great job. And she believed in me. She was very frugal, had a set of plastic dining room chairs in her front room. She doesn't like me saying that. Had just rehabbed and redone the home by her own sweat. And it was very frugal. And having just left the business and basically having to buy my way out of my former business to honor our commitments with investors, I was working both time with Clearlink to try to start that business and trying to sort of close down my interest in that other business. Again, with this huge barrier of capital constraints, nobody believing in the internet anymore, and on and on and on. But let me tell you about the good that then happened. We went through, for the first 2 years of Clearlink, we didn't even have a website. We couldn't find, we engaged 2 different groups, put down deposits, spent the money, and months later, and after the pain of dealing with them and overrun deadline overruns, etc., those 2 of those businesses, those first 2 web development groups went out of business. They were used to making hundreds of thousands of dollars per site. That was no longer the environment. They had huge overhead, couldn't scale, and it was very, very difficult to find somebody who could even build a website, let alone generate traffic. SEO was in its very, very early stages. Nobody knew what that was, how to optimize your site. They thought if you had a website, people would just show up. That wasn't the case. And we found that out very, very quickly. But it wasn't until 2003 when we met a group called Odyssey Web. And it was through a series of very coincidental events that we met with them. Their 2 principals had just laid off their entire staff. They went from about 20 people down to just the 3 primary individuals in the business. One who was out there running business, chief technologist, and sort of an assistant. In meeting them, it changed our business. Was that me by chance? Okay. It changed our business. They had a great book of business, a great portfolio, excellent clients with Mrs. Fields, Career Builder, Pepsi. We had one brand relationship, and that was with Dish Network. And we had no website still. The beauty of what happened with Odyssey Web is we brought them in and we created an alignment. And the deal that we struck was, you get paid when we get paid. So we created an early alignment with them. So of course, they were interested in our success. It wasn't just build a website, let it sit. So they began to optimize that. And shortly thereafter, we began to see clients. We began to scale the business. So it went from sort of basement to 1,000 square feet to a solid office to what I'll now describe in 2011. So if you fast forward, and there is a lot I'll tell you about a little bit later about how it came to be. If you fast forward to 2011, this is what Clearlink looked like in this last year. Clearlink was honored for its 4th time on the Inc. 500 list. It was named one of the best companies in Utah to work for. We were down from our top in 2008, the 4th fastest growing company in the state, to about number 37. And we were generating about 500,000 customers for our brands that we partnered with. We were representing about 30 brands at that time. So we've gone from the original brand of Dish Network to these other services to the home. But we really always had the notion that we would become a provider or a reseller of these services to the home. So essentially, if you want to describe Clearlink, it was anything that you pay a bill for in your home, we would provide you for. And so as we went into different businesses and these brands and said, hey, this is our model, how do you like it? We're going to go out, take all the risk, spend all of our money on marketing, and we're going to hand you a customer on a silver platter. You can imagine that we didn't hear no very often. We had taken on all the risk, all the expense. We just wanted incremental business and opportunity to sell the products for them. It was a very efficient way to run a business where we could look a lot bigger than we were early on. And again, remembering that we didn't take on venture capital in our early days. By the time we probably were on the radar in VC groups, private equity groups, we didn't need it. And we were really, really fortunate to be in that position. Again, could we have seen quicker growth? Yeah, absolutely, I think so. But we were very, very happy in 2011 when we sold that business. Again, roughly 600 employees, and there were very few, and I'll note, for those watching online, there were very few hands that were raised when I asked if you knew Clearlink. And we were very, very strategic in that. We always wanted to be the brand behind the brand. That people generally wouldn't know who we were, and it wasn't until fairly recently that we sort of surfaced and have found ourselves as a brand that someone would recognize. What we were doing for our brand partners is generating over $500 million of revenue for them annually, and compounded annually. And then, of course, as Scott had mentioned in the intro, that business was sold on January 3rd, 2011, to Pamlico Capital in a 9-figure enterprise value transaction. They used to be Wachovia. But those are some of the highlights. What I really want to talk to you about is what we do now. And sort of, I gave you some of the highlights, some of the lowlights of how we got there. This part is why we're here, and why I'm excited to be a member of the community here in Utah Valley, and a member of the university community with Brigham Young and the Marriott School. For the last year, and as you can imagine, as an entrepreneur, you see a lot of different ideas. People see that you've made something work. You're able to look at a lot of different products that come through your door. We started investing shortly after we saw our first positive cash flows. Not in businesses that were necessarily within our business. We learned some tough lessons that way. But we saw businesses like HireView that Scott had mentioned, where David Bradford finds himself right now. We were the initial investor in that business. We were able to use our own technology and the things that we learned in our own business to grow that fledgling group at that time. So we learned. We unfortunately had early success in some of those investments. The first investment that we made was a company called Montogen. It was a biotech with 6 scientists that knew a lot about oncology, and they did a great job. I didn't know anything about oncology. When I say we were unfortunately successful, it's absolutely right, because we were the second largest investor in that business. We allocated to them. 2 years later, they exited at $40 million. So it was a great pop for us. The reason why it was unfortunate for us is we thought that that's how it always worked. You place money in a business, you get it right back. It's just that simple. So why don't we double down? Why don't we continue to invest in businesses? And it's just not that simple. And we learned the hard way. And we made some money when every dummy in the nation was making money in real estate speculation. Being one of those dummies, I was, and we did. But there are many businesses where we didn't follow fundamentals, and we might have gotten burned. They were early stage companies. We didn't know how to run them. We figured we were perhaps not vulnerable to market conditions, etc. And so, all the early gains that we saw were probably lost in some of these other additional investments that we had made with outside companies that weren't probably within our core. And so what we've been able to do over the last 10 years is look at a lot of businesses and figure out really, as investors and operators, who we are. And this is where we are now. We invest in businesses that we understand. Who in this room has heard of a company called Contour HD? It's sort of a lifestyle brand. You may not have heard of that one, but it's a little helmet cam, like a GoPro. You've probably seen a GoPro helmet that goes right on the top of a ski helmet, or guys that are on motorcycles and want to film that. It's got a little GPS in it that tells you what your speed is. I'll tell you a little bit about that company quickly as sort of a case study, right after we talk about sort of what is right down the line for us in terms of business. This is what we figured we were good at. We were good at investing in companies that had proven themselves, that had $1 to $5 million of EBITDA. So they had earnings. They knew who they were on a great growth track, but generally they either wanted to take out a deadweight partner, recapitalize the business, or just needed growth capital. And so we decided that we're a growth equity player. We invest in businesses that need this equity for growth of the business. Solid management. I've highlighted that because we're looking for A teams. And sometimes we'll invest in businesses that are A teams with maybe a C idea. And I'll give you an example of one of those in just a moment. So solid management is a key for us. Generally in the Mountain West region, not west of the Mississippi in most cases. And then a defensible strategy in the market. Also, of course, having that high growth opportunities. A good exit, terminal value at the end of the day, where they've got there's an accretive value in that business that creates a great liquidity event for us. And so what we've done in separating ourselves from a group like Yellowstone had about $700 million of assets under management when we left late last year. And we've now decided that we want the freedom that comes along with it just being our own capital. So we've dedicated within our fund assets of about $100 million that we can place within these businesses. Our placements range from the very small investments of a few $100,000 to some that I'll show you in a moment, to where it's well over $10 million. So we have the freedom and the leeway that maybe some other groups don't have, because they've got the SEC breathing down their necks to make sure that they're handling the money properly, and that's not a bad thing. You want your money handled properly. But we as a private family office essentially can say, if we like the deal and we like the people behind the deal, we invest in that deal. And we don't have limited partners as LPs saying, you can't do that because that's not in your charter, or it has to have X, Y, or Z thing. If we feel it has that X factor, we can go in and have the latitude to invest in a company like that. And so that's what we've done. And let me show you just a couple of those. So I asked you about Contour HD. Again, one of those that you may or may not have heard of. I was actually a client thanks to my wife. She bought me one of these helmet cameras a couple of years ago when I went heli skiing. So I get up on the helicopter, going down my first run. It's a bluebird ski day. And I did a header over a big boulder right in front of me and into about 5 feet of powder. And unfortunately, I hadn't connected that little helmet cam on correctly. Whoever found that in the spring, I'm sure got a great video of somebody doing a flip over a big boulder. But it wasn't me, and we never found it. And so that was my concern. You've got this great product, it doesn't even stay on your helmet. And I found out through the process that it was my mistake. User error, user error. That I didn't do a great job of connecting that. Now, so let me walk you through this company. In 2010, we run into them. We didn't invest or place till early 2011. But when we found Contour HD along with Black Oak Capital, they were doing about $15 million of sales. They're based out of Seattle, Washington. Great little group, about 40 employees there. We took a bet on it, but they had earnings. And this GoPro camera, which is a great comp for them, they could see what they were doing in the market. The GoPro ended up doing this year about $170 million of sales. The only problem with the $170 million of sales that they had is they had no earnings. They were spending their way into the market versus what Contour was doing was they were sort of drafting behind them, sort of slipstreaming and saying, okay, well, we're not going to be the leader, but we're going to build our own group, and we have this great technology, and we have these very loyal followers, I being one of those before I became an investor. So we invested in them, again, along with one of our partners in Salt Lake. This year, they ended with almost 12,000% growth year over year over 3 years, and they were listed as number 7 on the Inc. 500 list. Great company. They ended up this year finishing up with about $35 million of revenue, and they're right on for the projections of about $70 million next year. So they'll double in size again. These are businesses that trade at about 2 to 3 times of revenues. So a good, solid business that'll be a 9-figure exit. We're really excited about what they do, assuming that they execute the way that we hope they will. And again, knowing that they're profitable. And in consumer electronics, that's a really big deal, because a lot of these consumer electronics brands will take a loss to support other products. They can't do that. They're a little bit of a one-trick pony. They have a great board. Our good friend Jeremy Andrus from Skull Candy sits on that board for us as a representative and does good things. So great company. But they have the fundamentals that we were looking for. Great entrepreneurs, A idea, A execution. And they had proven that to some degree. We came in, and I think we've added some value there. Number 2 is a case study, and this is one that we really like within our portfolio. I'm sure, I won't even ask the question because I'm sure that none of you have heard of True Science. It's a fairly new company. It's only been around for the last probably year and a half. But when they came to us in late 2010 and started pitching us on the idea of what they had, they were doing it. They were on a rate or a run rate to do about $2 million of sales to end 2010. No profits really to speak of. It wasn't that exciting for us, but they had this really, really interesting story and this really great group. of operators. The first was their CEO, and his name's Cord Christensen. And Cord was one of those that went out and had the gumption to buy the Polaroid license out of bankruptcy. They took that license, and over the course of the next 3 years after doing that, they generated almost $800 million of revenue. So a very steep curve for them to climb. They going to the almost $1 billion in sales. Grew that business. He liquidated, exited, pulled his chips off the table and put his money into what he thought would be very, very safe. And that was Boise real estate, just a few years back. Needless to say, that didn't go very, very well for him. He and his partners in those businesses lost their capital in doing that. So what we liked about these guys, even though they had their failures, they also had their successes, that these were guys that had a chip on their shoulder, and they were very, very hungry. They wanted to make something work. So they took what they had learned at Polaroid and growing that brand and working with these brands. In fact, this is the guy you can thank. He was a young executive at Albertsons. And at Albertsons, he came up with the idea to put the gas stations out in the parking lot and use that real estate that was unused. So this is the guy you can thank for that when you're filling up your tanks out in a Costco parking lot or an Albertsons parking lot or whatever. So a great innovator. Again, a guy who was very, very hungry, wanted to get things done. Had these great relationships with Costco, Walmart, and Kroger. What we did is we allocated to them as sort of a fully participating preferred, which means that we did that as an asset-based lending deal. We got all the benefits of ownership, but also had sort of the collateral as a senior note holder within the business. So basically, we were just factoring their inventory. Me saying, of course, to them, if you can grow the way you say you'll grow, we'll continue to grow with you. So we initially placed $2 million of capital with them. They soon grew to $4 million of need, to 6, to 8, to 10, and beyond. And we funded them through that. We're now the largest stakeholder in this business. But the exciting thing about them is they went from that, because of our help, in 2010, they sort of ended the year doing $6 million of business. And this last year, they just finished up doing about $50 million of revenue. Not bad, going from about 2 to 50 within a year. And that's this company. They also acquired the Dr. Sears brand. We guys in this room, or those of us who haven't been involved in the birthing process, probably don't know Dr. Sears, but I know my wife does, and she did before we knew about this Dr. Sears. His son, Jim, has got a TV show called The Doctors that's on ABC. You might have run across that if you're not doing your studies the way that you should in your morning television. Now, because of what they've done, taking this A team, and what I thought was a C idea, I really did, because if I can just back up for a second and tell you that when we came to these guys, the way that they were generating revenue wasn't because of Dr. Sears, and it wasn't because they had created their own brand with True Science, again, a brand you'll probably never know. But what they did is they figured out a way to make it a more efficient market, getting these flea and tick collars that were produced by a company called Frontline from veterinarians into stores. So by doing that, they were allowing these veterinarians to see some nice incremental revenue. Didn't have to do very much, slip it in an envelope, send it to these guys, they repackaged it, put it on a pallet, and a pallet this high had a couple $1 million of inventory in it. So it was very easy for us to ship and get out to these big box stores. Well, through the process, they figured out that maybe it's not just flea and tick collars. And you've probably heard of 1-800-PET-MEDS. They spend tens of millions of dollars in advertising every year. Well, the unfortunate part about that, and the way that we've looked at them, is it's not 1-800-PET-MEDS for a telephone number. It might be 1,800 steps to actually get your pet meds back to your dogs. Because it's difficult. It's very inefficient. You go to your veterinarian, you then go back and call 1-800-PET-MEDS, you get everything verified with your veterinarian, you're back and forth with them on several different steps. Their business is suffering, and it's because they sort of jumped. And I'm a believer in technology. I love the business and how they've tried to create an efficient market, but what they haven't done is they haven't recognized the power of these big box stores, and where we typically get a prescription, we go to Costco, or we go to Walmart, or Kroger's. So you're talking about, right here with Kroger, the largest grocer in America. You're talking about with Walmart, the largest retailer in the world. And with Costco, you're talking about the largest big box store by revenue in the United States. So you're talking about these large brands, and what they hadn't done is they hadn't thought about placing a pet pharmacy in any of these businesses. Now they're very excited about that. And each one of these brands going into 2012 have placed an aggregate back, John, 2 days ago? We just added Walmart. We had Sam's Club just added Walmart, and they've added another $100 million to the business in orders for next year. So looking at about $350 million of orders next year. But like any business, even businesses that have a tier 1 spokesperson like Jack Nicklaus, and I have to say that was only a win for us because our COO was the only business partner that Jack has ever had. He was the guy that went out on the road for 90 days, taking the Jack Nicklaus brand private after it had been public and was being published, or punished rather, in the public market. So he did a great favor for Jack. Jack is doing a great favor for us and has agreed to be our tier 1 spokesperson as we go into these brands. So it's a really exciting time for us. Good margins, but again, this was one that we looked at and said, is there really any terminal value? It's sort of a cash flow play. We'll figure out how to sell these dog collars, these flea and tick collars to people, but does it ever have a terminal value? I didn't think so. But what we learned through the process was it would cash flow, and we figured out it was very, very similar to our Clearlink business. It was a brand behind the brands. We're the company behind these pharmacies now distributing into the Walmarts and Costco's and Kroger's of the world. So it's an exciting thing for us. 2012 looks very bright, and we're hoping for a liquidity event in 2013. So let me just, again, talk, those are some of the pieces in our portfolio right now, and I want to be sensitive to time. But our asymmetry is that you've got a lot of players here on the angel and venture side. You've got Pelion, Mercado, Peterson Ventures, on and on and on, B-Spring. And we know these guys very, very well. They do great deals. We have a lot of respect for them. On the other side, you've got the Ares Capital, Rick Durham there, Huntsman Gay, who's now relocated out to Palm Beach, California. And you've got the Peterson Partners. These guys are doing deals with companies that are doing $10 million of EBITDA or above. Call it 5 and above. But they have to place $20, $30, $50 million to even move their dial for their LPs. These are people, most of them manage funds in the several $100 million, if not billions. We like Sorensen Capital. We've been in meetings with them in the last several days on one of our other brands. We like them very much, but what's taken place is there's this underserved market for companies like us to come in and help grow businesses that have proven their model, and on and on. And we're excited to help capitalize entrepreneurs and help these entrepreneurs that have sort of that fire in the belly, that are really excited to make a business really work. I have to put in a quick plug for what we're doing with Utah Business Magazine too right now. We're doing a business accelerator project. So those of you who are running your own detailing company, those of you who are running any kind of company, it's sort of like that home makeover show that they have on ABC, where they go in and they make over a business. If you'd like us to, or know of a company that's doing a company makeover and needs some exposure, that's what we do on the Utah business side. We're really happy to be part of that. We hope that we can be involved somehow with this business model competition. We're excited for that next week, and we look forward to that in years to come. I mentioned earlier that there are a lot of us involved in sort of what we've done in the last few years, in the last 10 years. I want to talk to you about just a few people that I think have been important in my life, and something that I'll tell you is an important thing as you're these budding entrepreneurs and what you're doing here at the Marriott School. If I could just give one bit of free advice, so again, it's worth what you're paying for it right now, but it's find that mentor in your life. I, as a young man, was one of the have-nots amongst the haves. There's a famous old book that's called The Have-Nots Amongst the Haves, and I was one of those, to watch folks that were doing great things in business, but also to have their ear to talk to them. I had an aunt and uncle that grew a great business. They were the types that were on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous and grew this business. And you probably don't know the name Diet Center, but you would know the name Jenny Craig. And that's where Jenny Craig came from. And it was the precursor to that business, which was sold off earlier in its life than probably it deserved. We incubated our first business there with Todd Peterson. He was a very helpful mentor to me in figuring out how to run a business. I didn't think Todd was the hardest worker, but he was one of the smartest workers to figure out how to run a business. Coming into the office in t-shirt and shorts after he'd been working out at the gym half day. I thought he was a fantastic example of what an entrepreneur could be. He was very, very helpful as a mentor and still is. And as a young professional, a guy named Spencer Clarke I had access to, who helped us in our business trying to figure out, for me, how to figure out how to navigate down the river a bit. This was you may not know Megahertz, you probably know US Robotics, and you'll definitely know 3Com. These were the companies that he was involved in. Each was acquired by the other, and now he's the chairman and CEO of Extra Space Storage, a $2.5 billion REIT in Salt Lake City. These are the people that are going to help you as young entrepreneurs. I hope I can be someone like that you can reach out to, and we love doing that in our office. I'm a product of that, and we believe in that same learn, earn, and return model that's here at BYU and at the Marriott School. 4 principles that we live by that I think are fairly powerful. Again, I'm trying to be sensitive of time. We're going to wrap up. Beware of entitlement. As young entrepreneurs, as young business people, no one owes you a thing. No one owes you a thing. Because you've had friends that have been successful, because you know people that have been successful, no one owes you anything. You will live the law of the harvest as entrepreneurs, and don't be, because a company is doing great, doesn't mean you should be perhaps paid more, doesn't mean you deserve any more equity. We've run into this problem of entitlement. Entitlement is the deal killer. Entitlement is the company killer. And it will certainly hold you back in all parts of your career. We saw that with entrepreneurs in some of our businesses. It was a great business. There's some entitlement there. A company called 1-800-Pharmacy. We love this business. I served on the board. I'm still a stakeholder there. This is a business that's been around for years now. I love the business model. 1-800-Pharmacy, buy your meds online. It's very similar on the human side, just like our True Science business. I love it. But guess what they didn't do? They could never cross the chasm. You can see the 2 people up there. They were too afraid to take the jump. It was always, we need to raise more capital. We need to get these pieces lined up within the business. You never cross the chasm. You've got to jump, and you have to take the leap. Make it a calculated leap as much as you can. But make the leap and cross the chasm, and because success lies on the other side. You've heard now from Nathan Furr and Paul Alstrom in their recent book, Nail It and Scale. We've been saying that for years within Clearlink. That was our battle cry, because we really did. Going from sort of the one website up to the 20 different URLs, or 20,000 different URLs when I left, and unique websites. We nailed it. We figured out how to do it once, and we moved on from there. Nail it and scale it. And last, when I was growing up, I had a job with my dad, who happens to be here in the room, and I appreciate that. And I was paid $15 a week, $3 a day, $1 an hour to paint the fence or to fix the yard or do those kinds of things. On the memo section of the check every week, it either read labor and honor, if I had done a good job, or if I had not done a good job. It was just labor. And it stung, and it hurt. And it hurt especially because that was our name. The Clarke name means labor, and labore et honore, that's the Latin crest that comes from our English heritage. That's the Latin title of that. My challenge to you is labor and honor. In everything that you're doing, in every business, that's one thing, if I could express that, especially as we've now become a part of this community. Sometimes we, as alumni of BYU, don't have the best reputation in the business world. I know that there's so much good that comes out of the school, but sometimes within this valley and within, it's everywhere. So I don't mean to pick on any one group, but what I'm trying to say is really that we have to be honorable in everything that we do, especially as we go out in the world, especially even in our backyard, that we be honorable amongst ourselves and amongst others, that we labor and be honorable. I'll tell you just my last piece. I got this as a framed picture for Christmas this year. This picture doesn't mean anything to you, but it means everything to me. It reads triumph. This was not a triumph of mine. This right here is my first failure. Can you see how old and decrepit and run down this place is? This is a young 20s guy, so this is, 18 or so years ago. I bought this place. It was my first investment. I'd been given a little bit of money that I thought would be helpful. I had some savings and thought that I was going to be an entrepreneur. I thought I was going to go out and buy this. You can see that front door, downstairs. This is a fourplex. This is big in Idaho Falls. Awful place. As we ripped down walls, rats would fall on our heads. As we ripped up carpet, the smell would have knocked most of us out. Awful. This was my first failure. And what you can't read there is what I now read every day. And it's failure is known only to he who once faltered, who never summons the strength to try again. Triumph, however, is known only to he who falters, fumbles, and fails, then arises, attempts, and achieves. I failed miserably on this. I could have given up. I could have completely gone away. I lost everything. I didn't lose just this place. I lost everything. Struggled in my education because of it. Everything. This is one of the most important pieces of education I ever had. Just as important as learning here in this room has been for me. My hope is that we, as representatives of this fine university, will go out and labor and honor and be honorable with the good names that we've been given personally and what this university gives to us. That's what will give us triumph. This isn't easy. You guys know that. And as you go out as entrepreneurs and business people, triumph comes to those who stumble and fail and get back up again and make it happen. And I wish you all the best. Lastly, I'll say this. This building right here that we meet in is, of course, as you know, the Tanner Building. Special name for us in our family because as my mother sits here, she was given a blessing by Elder Tanner as she had cancer. She was told by the doctors that she had 2 days to live, that they should prepare their family for the worst, that she was going to pass on. Elder Tanner placed his hands on her head and blessed her. They went in, opened her up to see if they could relieve the suffering in her body. And as they did that, the cancer was gone. I could share this in this group as we're here at BYU. Just after that, I was born. My name's James Nathan Clarke. James N. Clarke is in the N in Nathan Eldon Tanner. I'm proud to be part of this university. I'm proud of our heritage. And I wish you all the best to go out and labor and honor in your lives. And if I may close in the name of even Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.